Welcome, true crime enthusiasts, to another gripping tale on Whispers of the Guilty. I'm Silence, your guide through the shadowy realms of the unexplained and the unsettling. Tonight, we delve into the haunting case of Lars Mittank, a young man who vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of mystery and heartbreak that has baffled investigators and haunted the hearts of many. Picture a summer evening in July, the sun casting its final warm glow over the picturesque shores of the Black Sea. Varna, Bulgaria, is alive with the buzz of vacationers enjoying the sultry air and the inviting waters. Amidst this idyllic setting, a young German tourist, Lars Mittank, stood on the cusp of a journey that would forever alter his life and the lives of those who loved him. This is a story of fear, of mystery, and of a mother's enduring love. Join me as we unravel the layers of the case that has left the world searching for answers. Welcome to the enigmatic disappearance of Lars Mittank. On a balmy summer evening in July, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the serene Bulgarian coast. The air was warm, filled with the mingling scents of salty sea breeze and the faint aroma of grilled fish from beachside vendors. Varna, Bulgaria's largest seaside resort, buzzed with tourists. Among the crowd, Lars Mittank stood out, though not for any obvious reason at first glance. He was just another young man, enjoying the vibrancy of the Black Sea's shores. Lars Mittank was a 28-year-old German, a quiet man with an unassuming presence. He worked as an engineer and was known among his colleagues and friends as reliable and introverted. With a medium build, sandy blonde hair, and a thoughtful demeanor, Lars embodied the typical image of a hard-working, ordinary man. Despite his introversion, Lars had a close-knit group of friends who cherished his companionship and quiet wit. Lars had decided to join his friends on this trip to Bulgaria, a rare vacation for the diligent engineer. They had chosen Varna for its mix of lively nightlife and relaxing beaches, a perfect balance for a group seeking both adventure and rest. As the days passed, they soaked in the sun, explored the cobblestone streets, and relished the local cuisine. For Lars, this break was a welcome escape from his routine, a chance to unwind and connect with his friends. But something was different about Lars during this vacation. His friends noticed a subtle shift in his behavior, a sense of restlessness that hadn't been there before. On one of their final nights, Lars and his friends decided to watch a World Cup match at a local bar. The atmosphere was charged with excitement, the bar packed with enthusiastic football fans. As the night progressed, tensions flared. Lars found himself caught in a heated argument with a group of locals over the game. What began as friendly banter quickly escalated into a physical altercation. Though Lars wasn't seriously injured, the incident left a mark on him, both physically and emotionally. The next morning, Lars woke up with a dull ache in his jaw and a throbbing headache. His friends suggested seeing a doctor, but Lars shrugged it off, attributing it to the previous night's scuffle and a mild hangover. Determined to enjoy their last day in Varna, they headed to the beach. But Lars's discomfort grew, his headache intensifying under the blazing sun. By afternoon, he finally relented and visited a local clinic. The doctor diagnosed him with a ruptured eardrum, a result of the fight. Concerned about the potential complications of flying with such an injury, the doctor advised Lars to delay his return to Germany. He prescribed antibiotics and warned Lars to avoid air travel for at least a few days until the infection was under control. Lars's friends, sympathetic but bound by their schedules, had to return home as planned. Lars, ever the stoic, reassured them that he would be fine on his own and that he would rejoin them as soon as he was cleared to fly. As his friends departed, Lars checked into the Hotel Kolor Varna, a modest establishment near the city center. The hotel's faded facade and sparse decor were a stark contrast to the vibrant life of the beach resorts. Here, alone in a foreign city, Lars's unease grew. He became increasingly anxious, convinced that someone was following him. Calls to his mother back in Germany were filled with paranoia and fear. He spoke of strangers and feeling unsafe, though he couldn't pinpoint why or who might be after him. Lars's mother, Sandra Mittank, listened with growing concern as her son recounted his troubles. His voice, usually steady and calm, was now edged with a frantic worry that she couldn't quite understand. She urged him to seek help, to find a safer place, and to stay in close contact. Despite her reassurances, the distance between them amplified her sense of helplessness. Back at the hotel, Lars's paranoia intensified. He refused to eat the food offered by the hotel staff, fearing it was tampered with. He paced the hallways, peering out of the windows, looking for signs of the mysterious figures he believed were tracking him. The hotel's manager, perplexed by Lars's behavior, offered little more than sympathetic glances and polite inquiries. To those around him, Lars's fears seemed unfounded, the delusions of a man under stress. On July 8, Lars made a decision. He would try to fly back to Germany, despite the doctor's advice. Early that morning, he packed his bags and headed to Varna Airport. His steps were hurried, his eyes darting with a mix of determination and trepidation. At the airport, Lars consulted with the airport clinic's doctor, who reiterated the risks of flying with his condition. As he sat in the sterile clinic room, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare, something inside Lars seemed to snap. In a sudden burst of Panicked, Lars bolted from the clinic. He left his belongings behind and ran out of the airport, disappearing into the early morning light. The security cameras captured his swift exit, an image of a man gripped by fear, fleeing from an invisible threat. He sprinted across the parking lot, vaulting over a fence, and vanished into the surrounding woodland. For Lars Mittank, the world had shifted in those moments. The comforting routine of his life as an engineer in Germany seemed a distant memory. The sun-drenched beaches of Varna, once a haven, were now a backdrop to a bewildering and terrifying experience. Lars's disappearance marked the beginning of a mystery that would baffle authorities and haunt his family for years to come. The morning air was thick with humidity as Lars Mittank plunged into the dense undergrowth surrounding Varna Airport. The serenity of the early dawn contrasted sharply with the tumultuous chaos in his mind. He felt an urgent need to escape, driven by a palpable sense of danger that he couldn't fully articulate. Each step into the wild foliage took him further from the airport, further from the prying eyes he believed were hunting him. Lars' mind raced back to the events of the past few days. The vacation in Varna was supposed to be a simple getaway, a time to unwind with friends. But since the altercation at the bar, nothing had felt right. The scuffle had left him with more than a ruptured eardrum. It had triggered a cascade of paranoia and fear that he couldn't shake off. He was convinced that the men he had fought were still after him, watching his every move. This fear had grown into an all-consuming terror, distorting his perception of reality. Alone in the woods, Lars moved with a frantic energy, his breath ragged and his heart pounding. The whispers of rustling leaves and the occasional distant hum of traffic were his only companions. He stumbled over roots and branches, his eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. The foliage scratched at his skin, leaving angry red marks that mirrored the turmoil within him. As he forged deeper into the wilderness, Lars's thoughts were a jumble of fragmented images and voices. He remembered the unsettling sensation of being watched at the Hotel Color Varna. The hotel, with its dimly lit corridors and sparse decor, had become a prison of his own making. He had refused to eat, fearing the food was poisoned. He had barely slept, convinced that someone was lurking outside his door. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast by the flickering lights, had fed into his growing paranoia. Sandra Mittank, Lars's mother, had been his lifeline during these dark days. Her voice over the phone was a beacon of hope, offering comfort and urging him to stay safe. But the distance between them was vast, and her reassurances could only do so much. She listened helplessly as her son described his fears, each call more desperate than the last. She had begged him to find help, to stay in contact, but her words seemed to fade into the background of his escalating anxiety. In the days leading up to his disappearance, Lars's behavior had grown increasingly erratic. He had switched hotels, moving from place to place in a futile attempt to shake off the sense of being watched. Each move only deepened his isolation and fear. His calls to his mother became more frequent, his voice laced with a frantic urgency. He spoke of strange men following him, of being in grave danger, but he couldn't explain who they were or why they were after him. On the day he vanished, Lars had been determined to return to Germany. The Varna airport seemed like his last hope, a way out of the nightmare that his vacation had become. But the doctor's warning about the risks of flying with his injury had sent him spiraling into panic. As he sat in the airport clinic, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on his pale face, the world seemed to close in on him. The noise of the airport, the sterile smell of antiseptic, and the doctor's concerned gaze all became too much to bear. His sudden flight from the airport clinic was a blur of motion and fear. He had left behind his suitcase, his wallet, even his phone, everything that tethered him to his old life. The security footage captured those final moments. A man in a yellow t-shirt sprinting out of the terminal, leaping over a fence and disappearing into the unknown. It was a snapshot of pure, unbridled panic. Back in Germany, Sandra Mittank was plunged into a nightmare of her own. The call from the Bulgarian authorities confirming her son's disappearance shattered her world. She could barely comprehend the details, the footage of Lars running from the airport, the abandonment of his belongings, the desperate plea for help that had ended in silence. Sandra clung to the hope that her son was still alive, somewhere out there, fighting to find his way back. The news of Lars's disappearance quickly spread, capturing the attention of both local and international media. Theories about his fate ran rampant. Some suggested he had succumbed to the pressures of his injury and stress, wandering off in a disoriented state. Others speculated about darker possibilities, a criminal abduction or an accident in the unforgiving wilderness surrounding the airport. Authorities launched a search operation, scouring the forests and fields near the airport. Helicopters hovered overhead, their blades cutting through the humid air, while search dogs combed the ground, picking up faint trails that led nowhere. Volunteers joined the effort, their faces etched with determination as they pushed through the thick undergrowth, calling out Lars's name. But as the days turned into weeks, hope began to wane. The forest remained silent, offering no clues to Lars's fate. His friends, now back in Germany, were racked with guilt and confusion. They retraced their steps, trying to make sense of Lars's descent into paranoia. The vacation, once a bright spot in their lives, had become a haunting memory, overshadowed by the inexplicable disappearance of their friend. Sandra, refusing to give up, made her way to Varna. She walked the same streets her son had walked, visited the same places he had stayed, and spoke to anyone who might have seen him. Her days were filled with endless searches, and her nights with sleepless worry. The vibrant city of Varna, bustling with life, seemed indifferent to her grief. The sun still set over the Black Sea, casting its golden light over the beaches where Lars had once stood, now swallowed by the shadows of uncertainty. Lars Mittank's disappearance was more than a mystery. It was a stark reminder of how fragile the boundary between reality and fear can be. In the tranquil beauty of Varna, beneath the surface of everyday life, a young man's mind had unraveled, leading him into a labyrinth of paranoia and dread. The world watched and waited, hoping for answers that seemed ever more elusive with each passing day. The search for Lars Mittank unfolded like a jigsaw puzzle, missing its crucial pieces. Each effort to find him, each clue uncovered, seemed only to deepen the enigma. In the days and weeks following his disappearance, the dense forests and open fields near Varna Airport were meticulously combed by search teams and volunteers. Helicopters circled above, their rotors slicing through the humid summer air, while search dogs sniffed the ground, their keen senses picking up faint trails that vanished into the wilderness. As news of Lars's disappearance spread, it captured the attention of the public and the media, both in Bulgaria and internationally. Headlines in German newspapers carried his photograph, a young man with a gentle smile and clear, determined eyes. The image was repeated on news broadcasts and social media platforms, along with the haunting footage of his desperate sprint from Varna Airport. The question on everyone's mind was the same. What had driven Lars Mittank to flee so suddenly, and where had he gone? Back in Germany, Sandra Mittank's days were filled with phone calls and meetings with officials, her nights plagued by a gnawing anxiety. She worked tirelessly, coordinating with Bulgarian authorities and pleading for any information that might lead to her son's whereabouts. Sandra's grief was palpable, but so was her resolve. She traveled to Varna, retracing Lars's steps, hoping to find some clue that had been overlooked. Local authorities in Varna treated the case with the seriousness it deserved. The airport security footage was scrutinized, frame by frame, by investigators trying to piece together Lars's final moments before his disappearance. They interviewed airport staff, hotel employees, and anyone who had come into contact with Lars during his stay in Varna. Each interview painted a picture of a man spiraling into fear and confusion, a stark contrast to the calm, reliable engineer described by his friends and family. The investigation revealed that Lars had been increasingly paranoid in the days leading up to his disappearance. He had changed hotels several times, always insisting that someone was following him. His calls to his mother were filled with frantic descriptions of strange men and vague threats. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Lars's fear was real to him, a dark cloud that overshadowed his every move. One of the most perplexing aspects of the case was the encounter Lars had with a group of construction workers near the airport shortly before he disappeared. Witnesses reported seeing him talking to the men, though the details of the conversation remained unclear. Some speculated that he had asked them for help, while others believed he might have been seeking directions. The workers were interviewed, but their accounts provided little insight into Lars' state of mind or his intentions. Forensic experts examined the few belongings Lars had left behind at the airport clinic: a backpack, his phone, and his passport. These items offered no obvious clues. His phone, analyzed for recent activity, contained the frantic calls to his mother and a few internet searches related to his condition and flights. There were no messages or calls that hinted at the threats he feared. His backpack, filled with travel essentials, and his passport were typical of a tourist, nothing more. Meanwhile, Sandra's efforts in Varna bore a heavy emotional toll. She visited the places Lars had stayed, the restaurants where he had dined, and the bars where he had watched the World Cup matches. Each location held a fragment of her son's final days, but none provided the answers she sought. The locals were sympathetic, but largely unhelpful. Varna, a city bustling with tourists and daily life, seemed indifferent to the tragedy unfolding in its midst. In Germany, Lars's friends struggled to comprehend the bizarre turn of events. They had spent the vacation with him, sharing laughter and adventure, unaware of the storm brewing in his mind. The fight at the bar had been unsettling, but none had imagined it would lead to such a catastrophic unraveling. Guilt gnawed at them. They replayed their last days together, wondering if if there had been signs they had missed or if they could have done something differently. As weeks turned into months, the investigation into Lars's disappearance grew colder. The initial flurry of activity and media attention waned, replaced by a haunting silence. Sandra Mittank refused to give up. She continued to search, clinging to the hope that her son was still alive. She hired private detectives and reached out to international organizations that specialized in missing persons cases. The search broadened beyond Varna, extending into neighboring countries and across Europe, fueled by the belief that Lars might have somehow managed to escape and was living in hiding. Amidst the growing desperation, a few potential sightings of Lars emerged. Reports trickled in from various parts of Bulgaria and even farther afield, each one raising hopes only to be dashed when they led to dead ends. These glimpses of a tall, blonde man, often disheveled and wandering alone, kept the flickering flame of hope alive for Sandra. Each sighting was investigated thoroughly, but none provided the breakthrough needed to locate Lars. The authorities continued to follow every lead, no matter how tenuous. They explored the possibility of foul play, delving into Lars's interactions during his stay in Varna. The bar fight was re-examined, but no connections to organized crime or serious threats could be established. The men involved in the altercation were questioned and cleared. The possibility of a psychological break was considered, but without Lars himself, this remained speculative. Lars's disappearance took on a spectral quality, an unsolved riddle that lingered in the collective consciousness of those who had been touched by his story. The internet buzzed with theories and speculations. Armchair detectives and true crime enthusiasts analyzed every available detail, proposing their own interpretations of Lars's fate. Some suggested he had become a victim of human trafficking. Others believed he might be living off the grid, his mind still gripped by the paranoia that had driven him to flee. As the first anniversary of Lars's disappearance approached, Sandra Mittank held a vigil in Varna, hoping to keep her son's story alive in the public eye. Candles flickered in the twilight, their light reflecting off the tear-streaked faces of those gathered. Sandra spoke of Lars, his kindness, his dedication, and the inexplicable fear that had swallowed him whole. She pleaded for anyone with information to come forward, her voice breaking with emotion. The search for Lars Mittank continued, driven by a mother's love and the unyielding hope that somewhere, somehow, her son would be found. The forests and fields around Varna remained silent, guarding their secrets. The world moved on, but for Sandra, each day was a reminder of the son she had lost, a bright, gentle soul whose fate remained an agonizing mystery. As the first anniversary of Lars Mittank's disappearance passed, the case remained a perplexing mystery, cloaked in silence and unanswered questions. The media's initial fervor had faded, but for Sandra Mittank, the search for her son was an unending journey of heartache and resolve. Every lead, no matter how tenuous, was pursued with relentless determination. The forests of Varna and the dusty streets of nearby towns had been scoured, yet Lars remained a ghost, elusive and out of reach. Months stretched into years, each day a test of faith and endurance for Sandra. She had become a fixture in Varna, her presence a living testament to a mother's unyielding love. Sandra continued to reach out to the public, leveraging social media and maintaining contact with international missing persons organizations. Her story, and that of her son, captured the hearts of many who were moved by the haunting video of Lars's last known moments. In Germany, Lars's friends and family lived in a suspended state of grief and hope. His disappearance had cast a long shadow over their lives, leaving them to grapple with the weight of what-ifs and the lingering guilt of unanswered questions. They clung to the belief that Lars was still out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. Then, in the late summer of 2018, a glimmer of hope emerged. A report surfaced from a remote area in northeastern Bulgaria, near the Romanian border. A man matching Lars' description had been spotted by a local farmer, wandering through fields with a dazed and disoriented expression. The farmer, unaware of Lars's story, but struck by the man's odd behavior and haggard appearance, had offered him food and water. Lars had accepted gratefully but said little, speaking in broken German before continuing on his way. The farmer's report reached the Bulgarian authorities, who contacted Sandra and the search team. Excitement and apprehension mingled as they mobilized to investigate the sighting. Could this be the break they had been waiting for? The team combed the area meticulously, distributing flyers and asking locals if they had seen the mysterious man. For a moment, hope flared brightly. Despite the renewed efforts, the man vanished as quickly as he had appeared. The rugged terrain and sparse population made it easy for him to slip away, leaving only a trail of speculation in his wake. The sighting, while tantalizing, yielded no concrete answers, yet it rekindled the flickering flame of hope for Sandra and the search team. They intensified their efforts, expanding their search and employing new technologies, including drones and thermal imaging, to scour the vast, untamed landscape landscapes of Bulgaria and beyond. Years passed, and though leads grew sparse and far between, Sandra never wavered. She traveled tirelessly, following up on tips from as far afield as Romania, Serbia, and even Germany. Each journey was a step closer to Lars, or perhaps a step deeper into an abyss of uncertainty. She met with law enforcement agencies, local authorities, and missing persons organizations, always carrying with her the image of her son and the belief that he was still alive. In 2020, a breakthrough of sorts occurred. An investigator who had been following the case since its inception discovered a series of unexplored paths around the Varna area, hidden trails that crisscrossed the wilderness, leading to abandoned structures and remote clearings. These paths, often used by locals and wildlife, had been overlooked in previous searches. The team embarked on a new expedition, equipped with better resources and driven by renewed determination. During this search, they stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin deep within the woods, far from the usual tourist paths. Inside, they found traces of recent habitation, discarded food wrappers, an old blanket, and signs of a small fire. The cabin's solitude and the evidence suggested that someone had been living there, evading detection. While it wasn't definitive proof that Lars had been there, it reignited the investigation. Could this have been a refuge for him, a place to hide from his perceived threats? In parallel, forensic experts reanalyzed the few belongings Lars had left behind at the airport. Advances in technology allowed for more detailed examinations. DNA samples were cross-checked with those in international databases, and Lars's medical history was reviewed for any conditions that might explain his sudden onset of paranoia. The forensic team's renewed scrutiny did not uncover any new physical evidence, but it highlighted the complexities of Lars's mental state leading up to his disappearance. As time went on, Sandra's unwavering presence and the collective efforts of volunteers and authorities kept the search alive. Every year, on the anniversary of Lars's disappearance, Sandra held a vigil in Varna, a gathering of hope and remembrance. The events drew attention to Lars's case, reminding the world that he was still missing and that his story remained unresolved. The disappearance of Lars Mittank became a poignant chapter in the annals of unsolved mysteries. Theories abounded, from the plausible to the fantastical. Some believed he had succumbed to the elements or met with foul play. Others speculated that Lars had chosen to disappear, overwhelmed by the paranoia and fear that had gripped him. There were even whispers of conspiracies and secret lives, though these remained in the realm of speculation. In 2022, an unexpected development added a new layer to the ongoing saga. A video surfaced online, posted by a traveler who had been documenting their journey through rural Romania. In the background of one of the scenes, a figure resembling Lars was seen briefly, a fleeting, almost ghostly presence that once again ignited a flurry of activity. The video was analyzed and the area was searched, but the trail went cold once more. The figure, like so many other leads, had vanished into the ether. Throughout the years, Sandra Mittank's search for her son transformed into a symbol of enduring love and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. Her tireless quest brought together people from different walks of life, united in their desire to solve the mystery and bring Lars home. The disappearance of Lars Mittank, marked by moments of hope and profound despair, remained a testament to the fragility of human existence and the enduring power of a mother's love. As the world moved on, the story of Lars Mittank lingered, a haunting reminder of the unsolved and the unknown. In the quiet moments, when the hustle of life faded, the image of a young man sprinting away from an airport, chased by invisible fears, remained etched in the minds of all who had followed his story. Lars Mittank had disappeared into the wilderness, leaving behind a trail of questions and a mother's unending search for answers. As we conclude our journey through the mysterious disappearance of Lars Mittank, we are left with more questions than answers. From the sunlit beaches of Varna to the shadowy forests surrounding the airport, Lars's story has taken us on a path fraught with fear, uncertainty, and a mother's undying hope. Lars Mittank was a man much like any of us, seeking joy, grappling with fear, and ultimately caught in a struggle that remains incomprehensible. His case stands as a poignant reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the deep shadows cast by unexplained fears. If you've been moved by Lars's story, please share this video and keep his memory alive. Together, we can spread awareness and perhaps one day find the answers that have eluded us. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join me in exploring more cases like this one. Your support helps us continue to shine a light on the mysteries that lurk in the shadows. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, the whispers of the guilty are often louder than we realize.